I'm very
Since they're some Middle Eastern, where were they? They were like some Eastern European countries. So but it just looks like Colorado. Yeah. There's like something like that. Geographic consistency is the important thing. Very the representation of Abu Dhabi.
You never know. You're like, yeah.
Slow motion walking down the stairs. I saw that.
Thank you. It wasn't just us.
I'm not sure what I saw, but it was amazing.
We were saying that this is our favorite game, and it was just the loading screen. And they're like, yeah, it's gonna go now. Oh no, no. And then she was like, now, and it loaded. Oh my god. It's fine. We're just easily amused.
Yeah.
See? Yes. It's great. It is again loaded.
So they're really up their game. They were rolling.
Okay, everyone, thank you for coming and thank you for waiting. Welcome to the final portion of WIGS for 2015. This portion will consist of 5 diverse presentations on general topics relating to the wider topic of women and identity in gaming. All presenters are Lawrence University students who have selected topics that are of special interest to themselves. The format of these presentations will be 10 minutes of presentation, followed by 5 minutes of discussion. Our presenters today, in this order, will be Shay Albrecht, Megan Davidson, Brian Cebulski, Chris Gorgammon, and Evan Klass. So, I'd like to welcome our first presenter, Shay Albrecht, who will be talking about LGBTQ gaming.
Thanks, Angela. Okay, let's see. Clicker work? Yes. I love clicker. Oh, why did I do that? Okay. Well, this looked fine on my computer screen.
Sorry.
Whatever. It's cool. So I'm going to be talking about the LGBTQ population and their portrayal in video games. And there's actually really large and diverse groups on the internet that have kind of focused their attention on this particular topic. And a lot of the graphics that I'm using in my presentation are from those, they're fan-made from those groups. So that's where this comes from. So first, are games anti-gay? This comes from a YouTuber that talks about video games and uses ridiculous images like this to get views. So first, I'm going to do that one roadmap slide. So first, we're going to talk about a little bit about why study video games, just to give a general overview of why are we here, what are we doing, that kind of thing. Then I'm going to talk about why we should talk about this particular topic, this particular type of representation for these people. And then I'm going to go on to explanations and examples. And just as a warning, all of the bad examples of the LGBTQ population are going to come first. And then I do have a solutions slide. Yes, it's only one slide, but there you go. But I will be talking about some of the solutions and some of the good portrayals, the things that have been recently put out that are really good, really nice. And then we're done. So the other thing is that all of the examples that I have pulled from larger software programs, larger gaming programmers like EA and Blizzard, and like recognizable game titles. And I've also pulled only named characters, so like any background characters that are non-playable, you don't really know much about them. I wanted to focus on the characters that actually have a background to look at, because you can always say like, oh, that random background character number 5 is gay. Cool. That doesn't really tell you much. So that's why I picked the characters that I have. So, first one, why games? The first thing is that the video games and gaming culture are really influential, just like other types of media. They are becoming more recognized as impact on stereotypes and how stereotypes are played out, and how they reflect kind of the cyclical nature that we were talking about earlier today, where games will influence gamers and gamers influence games, but to break out of that cycle and actually do something good for the community instead of what's always been done is really hard. So one of the things I want to talk about very briefly is social identity theory, which is something that Jamin Warren, our keynote speaker, talked about this morning, that you kind of look for representations of yourself in certain types of media and in other groups. So that's really important to look at for video games, because representation then creates connection for the player. So if you're playing a game and you're like, yeah, this main character that I'm playing, I really connect with them, you're going to be more invested in the story and more invested in that particular game. So next, why this particular thing that I'm focusing on. First off, I just want everyone to raise their hands if you identify as a gamer. All right, cool. So perception is usually not the people that have raised their hands in this room. It's going to be a white, cisgender, heterosexual male between their, like early 20s and 30s. So the reality is that, we have a very diverse group in the room. Yes, a couple of you haven't raised your hands, but, that it's fine because you're here and you're, learning and taking in information and can then talk to other people about it. So the other thing is that the perception of your representation can really, especially in younger years where you kind of start getting into games, preteens, teenagers, it really affects how you look at yourself. Again, social identity theory, if you're not finding what you think of as yourself in the games that you're playing or the TV shows that you're watching or the other types of media in your life, you can kind of feel invalidated. You feel like you've been erased from what you're seeing around you. And Adrienne Shaw is a woman who has been doing a lot of the major game research in the past 5 or so years. And she just said that targeted marketing can make members of those particular groups less likely to identify as gamers. So we've kind of seen this with the pink and purple games, where they're made for women and girls, that women and girls don't want to play those games because they don't identify as a fashion designer, or they don't want to just play with My Little Pony, or this, that, and the other. So that's really huge. We have to have a diverse representation of people in order for the people who want to play these games actually want to play them. So first, I want to go over gay and lesbian characters within video games, and I had to put them both on 2 slides like together because I actually couldn't find any lesbian named characters within, before, I think it was like 8 years ago that you actually finally had a named lesbian character in a video game. So they're together on 1 slide, and that's why. So the first thing is that, in general, it's a you choose to be gay, or you opt in to be gay or a lesbian character in a game. So you make your character and you can decide to do that, but there's no characters, like non-playable characters within the game that are just automatically like, this is a gay character and this is their background and that kind of thing. So that's a problem. They also don't really have a lot of backstory usually. They're not as fleshed out of a character. They're kind of pushed to the background while the main character, usually a white, cis, heterosexual person, is the foreground and has a lot of backstory and is very interesting and vastly unique. And a lot of times, like I said, you're not going to find those lesbian characters. It's, not a thing, apparently. And most of the time, they're going to be the gay characters that you do see in the history of video games are very campy. They're super feminine. They have, like the stereotypical gay thing going on, where they have a very high voice. They use very feminine mannerisms, and that sort of thing. They're very stereotypical. So just a couple examples. This is from Streets of Rage 3. It came out in the 80s. And these are the less risque screenshots of the game I could find. He is hilarious, very campy, and has Go-Go Boys as his special power in this fighting game. Then we also have Kuja from Final Fantasy IX. He is very over-sexualized. It's interesting. And the gameplay with him is very sexualized. There's a lot of sexual overtones to his character. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, not a whole ton of backstory for a lot of these characters, too. Last one is Gene Armstrong from Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. It's a DS game. And he's very campy, super flamboyant, but still has that like masculine physique. So, also a problem. Bisexual characters, you're also not going to see a ton of. Oh my goodness, why is it doing? Okay, well, you generally find them super over-sexualized. You find characters like succubi and anyone and everyone type of characters. And you also have a lot of bi-erasure in video games as well, where you're either gay or heterosexual, or you're lesbian or heterosexual. Like, there's no sort of in-between for, bisexual characters. So that's also problematic. A couple of really bad bisexual characters. This is Vamp, and he's named Vamp because he's bisexual. That's something that is actually revealed in gameplay dialogue. Literally, his nickname is Vamp because he's bisexual. So, you also have Colonel Volgan from the same game. He is a man of broad tastes, but very sadistic, and he's also one of the villains in the game. You have Trevor from Grand Theft Auto 5, and in his character description, he goes for anything that moves. And then you also have the Succubi from Darkstalkers, and this is actually fan art because a lot of the images from the game are a little too racy for this presentation. So there you go. You also have Reaver from Fable 3, but once it's revealed that he's bisexual, then he's called monstrously evil and depraved, and a lot of the posters put up around the town in this game are graffitied over, and awesome. Thanks, guys. I don't know what's happening. Okay. But the other thing, trans and genderqueer characters have been particularly problematic in video games because a lot of people are putting that label on the characters, and it's not shown in the game itself that character is trans or genderqueer. So very androgynous characters. They're a lot of times comic relief, like Bridget. He's a boy, but was raised like a girl, but still wants male pronouns. But he's very fetishized too. Fetishized and a comic relief character. So cool. First example I've got is Birdo a Birdetta, and that quote is actually directly from the game manual. And yes, it's 88, but it's in print. Like, you can find this online, pictures of this quote in print. You've also got Kina and Vivi from Final Fantasy. These two characters are very frequently labeled trans, but they're genderless. Like, their actual race doesn't have gender. So again, it's one of those labels that people have thrown on there, like, okay, yeah, they're trans characters. Not really. You also have Night Dancer, only revealed to be male if you break the combat law, meaning within the game, if you try and fight, like if you're a female fighter and you try and fight a male target, it won't let you. And that's the only way that you find out that this character is biologically male. So, and then you've got one of the antagonists from Resident Evil. He transforms into a woman at the end with some sort of serum, and that magically makes him trans, apparently. So a couple of solutions. It comes to some hypothetical questions, like why can't characters be something else if it doesn't affect their personality? Or why can't they be something else if it does affect their personality? Or, why is this not represented more? And then you can come up with solutions like this. This is just a list of some of the characters. I picked out Krem from Dragon Age especially because he's trans, and they do it very, very well. They have an entire dialogue set that goes through his character, and his commander steps up and says, no, he's a great fighter, I don't care, he does really well, he pulls his weight, I don't want to talk about it. And that's great. So, and you can look into any of these other ones, they're pretty good. And then the last one is Riley and Ellie, one of the only instances of named lesbian characters that have actual background to their story. So that's that. Sorry, I went to the first time. I start talking and then I just keep talking. Cool. Questions from people? Yes, Fiona.
Yeah, you had this on a slide, but you didn't mention it.
Yeah.
And that was probably because you're worried about going over time.
Yes.
I understand that. But can you talk a little bit about the argument that genderqueer characters are being represented through alien and fantasy races?
Yeah. I personally find that problematic just because you're alienating trans people and you're alienating genderqueer people. You're literally making a genderqueer character as an alien race. Like, how could you?
Nothing more othering than that.
Exactly. You're literally making them an alien. I don't know what else to say because it's so ridiculous to me that they would think, oh yeah, no, we have accurate representation of trans and genderqueer people because we have some alien races that don't identify with their gender. Really? Yeah, I don't even have a response to that because I think it's so ridiculous. So.
So I'm curious if you had any further thoughts on this sort of disparity between gay and lesbian representation in video games. Would you sort of attribute that to video games' sort of obsession with reinforcing masculinity, maybe?
I would, partially that, and partially just the disparity between just male and female characters. Because you still have the majority of characters being male, up to 75 to 80% in a lot of AAA titles still. So it didn't surprise me really, and I do think that that's also part of the problem, that you just don't have enough female characters. But yeah, I do think that reinforcing masculinity and like making fun of gay people was definitely like, the gay characters were comic relief a lot of times in these early games. Like, oh, this is hilarious. Like, let me, dance around with my go-go boys and I'm gonna spin around in a circle and that's my special attack and like, making fun of them. So unfortunate but true. Yeah. Anyone else? Cool.
Megan Davidson's going to talk about casual games.
So what I'm going to be talking about today is the dichotomy between what some people call core and casual gaming. Generally, when I say something like that, most people have an idea of what a casual game is. It kind of pops into your mind. But our generation has kind of grown up on what Jesper Jewell in the Casual Revolution called the casual revolution, because console gaming has become a lot more mainstream as we've gotten older in our generation, and this new group of gamers has really risen or come from older generations, and then of course unfortunately become immediately shunned by the core gaming community, and generally these people are referred to as casual or casual gamers. So what is a casual game? Good, the words disappeared. That's fine.
This is what happens when you try to take a whole bunch of presentations and put them into one.
It's fine. Oh, look. Oh, I forgot I put animations in. It's fine. We're doing good. It's fine. Everything's good. general market definition of what a casual game is that it has a high replayability factor, which means you can just play it over and over and over and over again. And while it might get boring after a while, it is still like the same kind of game and the same idea, and there's not really a lot of change in strategy or character development or anything like that. It generally doesn't require a long-term commitment. You can play it for 5 minutes and then put it away, and it doesn't really matter that much the game's like progress. And there's not a lot of strategy. Like I said, you swipe dots or cut fruit in half or do something like that, and you don't really have to think about strategy as much generally. Some examples of casual games are Candy Crush or Bejeweled, sports games, Farmville, Animal Crossing, or Spellfall. All of these games generally have low replayability, low strategy. You just kind of run around the world or make a farm. Time. Some games have like time settings, so you have to wait several hours before you can do anything. And then the general colloquial definition, which is from Urban Dictionary, is that any kind of game that is overhyped or referred to by gamers as crap. This will give you a general idea of the popular gaming idea of what a casual game is, but keep in mind that this wasn't a super popular definition. The way Urban Dictionary works is by upvotes and downvotes, and this definitely had more downvotes than upvotes, but it's also the only definition they had. And this says, if your grandma likes it, you know it's cool. So, it's fine. So the way casual gaming kind of happened is we started with like basic arcade games and with little dots on the screen, and everybody played that, and a lot of people would define that as a casual game now. Then we moved into computer games, into text-based games, into gamers turning into like kids in their basement or adults in their mom's basement and stuff like that. And then once consoles started rising again, we see this new generation, like I said, of gamers who play on consoles, who play on their phones, who play on their tablets, and that's anyone from like my 3-year-old cousin to my grandmother. Everyone plays these games, but they're still really, really disparaged, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, arcade gaming, computer gaming, smartphones. So the casual gaming demographic, like I said, has risen drastically once smartphones happened, and that's not where smartphones. Oh, the little blue line is smartphones. That's fine. Yeah. So the revenue has just kept getting bigger, and this is just the U.S. and it's just grown, like I said, drastically. So why has casual gaming gotten so... Why does it make people angry? Is the real question. These are a bunch of memes that I found of people being angry about the existence of casual gaming and its popularity. I've lost my note. Yeah, and so a lot of people just get really angry about this or make jokes that are generally rude and offensive. And so there's a lot of different reasons that people say this. There is an argument that casual gaming is ruining the industry because only like your grandma plays it, and then they'll never make any cool games ever again, which is obviously not true, as we probably all know from the existence of indie games and Steam and the incredible popularity of games. gamer. A casual gamer is, shockingly enough, someone who plays casual games. They're also gamers who play less frequently than other gamers, or, as Wikipedia tells me, plays games designed for ease of gameplay or more involved games in short sessions at a slower pace. And it's often can often refer to people, like I said, who play less frequently, and they're the largest market of gamers right now. The more colloquial definitions, these are the least offensive ones I could find. Trust me, it was a struggle. And yeah, so they generally use use games as a means of socializing. So that's what Farmville, that's what all the Facebook games are by definition inferior to hardcore gamers, or a group of people who enjoy and play video games because they are fun, which I would hope is all gamers, truly. Yeah. So now that I've talked about casual games, what are hardcore games? Again, the marketing definition, which is just kind of a general definition that I've looked at, is it has to be strategic. You have to play it for a long time to get good at it, and it generally has very complicated mechanics. And then the colloquial definition is any game which successful completion or demonstration of skill requires a significant investment of time and effort on the player. So this is games like League, where I think I have examples on the next slide. I do. So this game like World of Warcraft, where you have to spend a lot of hours. League, Dota, Mass Effect, Left 4 Dead, Bioshock, all of those. All of those are considered hardcore games because you need to take time in order to get good at them or to play through them. And then, so hardcore gamers are people who spend a lot of time playing games and a lot of time playing games, learning about games, reading about games. And they play hardcore games and are generally considered more committed to gaming than casual gamers. The colloquial definition that I found was they play more than 2 or 3 hours per day. They don't care about graphics, and they put good gameplay above everything else. And a lot of these ideas come with stereotypes. I don't know why it's spaced like that. So, it's fine. So, yeah, for hardcore gamers, there's a stereotype of the out-of-shape guy in his parents' basement that never talks to anyone outside of a computer. And then for casual gaming, the stereotype tends to be the middle-aged mom on her iPhone, or teenagers playing Call of Duty, and generally they're not willing to spend money on games. This is an ad I found that I think is both offensive and hilarious, because it just kind of shows really what I just said about this stereotypes of casual versus hardcore gamers. So I don't know if you can read it, but the hardcore gamer is a guy with crushing a soda can and looking really hardcore about it, I guess. And your WASD keyboard looks like it's been through World War II, and all of this really intense sounding stuff. And then the casual gamer is like, your keyboard is pristine, and you can't spend more than $5 on a game. And you can see the little sim symbol in front of her computer, and she's sipping a soda. It's pretty calm. Yeah. So look at all that sexism. Yeah. This is the general stereotype. This ad was actually taken down very quickly due to the large amount of backlash, which is good in my So these generally stereotypes, but surprise, it's mostly false. The dichotomy is largely, all the stuff I've been telling you is very conflicting, is vaguely understood, and generally people kind of be like, oh, I'll know it when I see a casual game, but it's only if I don't like that game, because, yeah, they're usually conflicting, confusing, problematic, and it's just not a solid thing. So there's not really that much difference in casual versus core games or gamers. There's just a difference of opinion and tastes of people who play games. The problem with this is that the community ends up splitting pretty badly. This is like a Google search from my computer. I just copied this, or screenshotted this, and you notice people don't have a super positive view of casual gamers, and this is not a cool thing because we could all be working together, and your definition of casual gamer is your definition. It's not everyone else's definition, so you're making it up. Congratulations. Yeah, so many casual gamers, they don't even self-identify as gamers, and that makes the community seem a lot smaller than it really is. And it makes gamers seem more into the hardcore stereotype that I showed you. It makes them seem like all gamers have to be the guy in their parents' basement when they're really diverse and really different, cool people. It leads to this idea that casual gamers are fake gamers, that they're not real gaming fans, that they don't actually care about the industry, they don't care about the community, they're just kind of playing for fun, which can be true, but it also alienates a lot of people. So this kind of rage is problematic. And then if we look at the industry, like the idea of creating this dichotomy really limits a lot of game creators because they feel like they have to fit into this one stereotype or another. So they can't make a cool game with both casual and hardcore ideas because they feel like they have to make one or the other. And often, like I said, right now, casual games are a lot more popular. See, console games make up a good chunk of what's selling right now. And social handheld tablet games also. So if you consider PC games hardcore games, that's the chunk of it that's making money right now. Yeah. So in summary, the dichotomy between casual and hardcore games is both unnecessary and problematic. And I think some possible solutions are to stop stereotyping and recognizing that as a community we can all like the games we like and it will be okay. But I'd like to hear what your solutions are. Yeah. And that's basically our.
Hi, my name is Fiona, and I'm a casual gamer. I didn't raise my hand earlier when she asked me what to identify as gamer. So there you go.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? Peter?
Just kind of.
Question, Peter?
I'm all of them. So, just kind of, I find the perception, particularly of Animal Crossing, as a casual game. I definitely think that it is perceived as that, but I also think that's hilarious in terms of the definition because it's one of the few games I know where you have to, like...
Yeah, it's actually hard.
You have to devote an immense amount of time to it at specific times and days.
But it's cute.
But it's cute.
Exactly. That was another thing I didn't actually talk about. But if a game looks adorable, it's not hardcore. Because hardcore is manly and Really?
Because they've got different things for different seasons, and I think the perception of that is not being or not being seriously devoted to a thing is just kind of funny. But the other is the kind of looking at what games are considered hardcore versus casual, and the cost involved with obtaining them. Often the hardcore being on requiring a lot of processing power on or a very expensive computer, a lot of money spent on peripherals for the computer, or a lot of money spent on a current gen console, as well as then the console games generally costing you about $60 each. Whereas I think one of the memes that you used specifically mentioned RuneScape.
I think so.
I think on that level, there's also something of a, well, it's not directly stated or recognized. I think there's also something of a, how much money do you actually have to spend on these games? And how much time do you have to devote on based on your economic situation? I think that's kind of further problematizes the issue.
Well, it's another indication of how committed you are.
Right.
How much are you willing to literally spend to do this hobby?
Games
Right.
over food.
Yeah.
Evan?
I found it really interesting how much the perception of a casual game came from this notion of a social game. Like your graph for casual games was actually specifically about social games. Facebook, and that was probably limiting itself to Facebook and other social media games. But I found that incredibly interesting because when you look at the opposite side of things, very often hardcore games like World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Dota are incredibly social and tend to depend upon team play or introducing yourself to a team-based environment to fulfill that gameplay experience. So, yeah, that dichotomy does kind of show just how BS this is.
Yes.
They have explosions and fake Lord of the Rings names, so it has to be intense.
Right. That's how it works.
I think people brought up some really interesting points that make me wonder if this distinction is almost just a coded way of talking about sexism and classism. There's nothing more than that. That's the instruction is the construction is entirely for that purpose.
Yeah.
And
In many ways.
we just project this other stuff into it and pretend that it's a meaningful model somehow.
I would agree with that. I was trying really hard not to say that outright because I figured if the evidence would speak for itself.
Sorry.
No, it's good. You said it, not me.
That's exactly
That was
what
you know.
the evidence and you came up with that. There you go. Yep.
Yep.
I think going a little bit of a different direction. So I would like to kind of assume that the same types of people who get mad about this casual versus hardcore thing are also like internet trolls or people who would self-identify as
ways, I think we are working towards it, but there is also still a lot of anger and a lot of not inclusivity.
How do you get rid of that when you just have like a couple of voices that are shouting really loud?
I think that the best way to get rid of that is keep making games that are inclusive and to keep, if you're part of the community already, be part of the solution.
So we are solving the problem.
Yes, we are solving it. It's just not solved.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you. Next we have Brian Sobolski. Talk about masculinity in games.
Yeah, something like that. Is this the cookie? Yeah. Perfect. Sorry. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian. So this term, I'm conducting an independent study on masculinity in video games. It's sort of a development from Professor Cohen's American Masculinity in Film class. But in reading the literature, a lot of it has to do with ethics. So I've sort of found that my discussion has to talk a lot about ethics. So I'm going to start by stating the obvious, or what I would hope would be obvious. Killing people is a moral dilemma. You don't always... yeah. And you always see it treated this way in movies and books, but by its nature, for a long time, it wasn't really explored in video games. That's because it didn't really develop as a narrative medium to begin with. They grew into it. I like to say it's the only artistic medium in which Hamlet grew out of Game of Tennis, which I've copyrighted that idea, so nobody can take it. So most of our early games took a very simple approach to morality. The two here, Galga and Missile Command, involve just protecting yourself from an attack. There are bad guys, and you have to kill the bad guys. You have to defend yourself against an attack, as I said. The morality of the conflict was simple. Now, this kind of game warrants an undeniably addicting gameplay mechanic, but we should have more to it. We still see it continue to this day, just with more fluid controls, more varied ways to fight, better production values, and more developed plots. This last is important because by the time more complex game narratives developed, so did the necessity for a more sophisticated moral justification behind shooting these bad guys. Let's see. Games have managed to avoid this issue, though, in a number of ways. Dead Space, for instance, has you fighting evil parasitic aliens. The Doom games introduce Hellspawn. The Fear series has a bunch of non-sentient clone soldiers. Games will grab at anything, any justification in order to adhere to that good-bad binary. Like, anything you're killing is completely, purely bad. No questions asked. But not every game does this these days. The new Tomb Raider reboot, for instance, while I do love that game, you basically wipe out most of the population of Eastern Europe by the end of it. It tries to paint these guys as pure evil, but the plot of the game suggests that they're just very scared and they just really want to get off this island that the game is based on. So they're just desperate. And thus, the problem with retaining this basic kill the bad guys framework within more sophisticated game narratives is that oftentimes they're just not purely bad guys anymore. Games have grown as narratives, and they don't take advantage of this as they should. Addicting gameplay is great, but it's a waste not to take advantage of the opportunities this advanced stage in game development opens up to us. Certain games involve the player more intensely with the protagonist's moral choices, and I'd like to take a minute to just explain a few of them.
So, forms of moral complexity. I found that games involve the player with their morality through either or both the game's mode of play and the game's narrative. Basically, I'm just going to go through a few of these examples and see how they fit into each of these categories. Illustrated the potential for games to offer the player more complex, nuanced takes on morality, as opposed to the typical good versus evil approach. First, morality is a player-based dilemma. Here are two very polarizing examples. On the top we have Manhunt, which I don't really recommend by any stretch of the imagination. You play as a death row inmate who is forced to participate in a series of snuff films in order to fight for your life. The gameplay revolves around stealth and assassinations, but the interesting, very odd mechanic is that it rewards you on the more gruesomely you kill a character, because it's a series of snuff films, so I guess that's more entertaining. It's a very sketchy approach. Like, you could go through each level using the minimum amount of violence, but the game suggests through its gameplay that that's no fun. And that you should be able to, but okay. Could talk about this forever. I think that a mature player could take this game as a practice of a practice or an exercise in how to deal with ethics. Just how far are you willing to go to rack up more points in this game? Thief, on the other hand, in which you play a thief, it suggests through its difficulty modes that a true master thief doesn't need to kill people in order to succeed. On easier modes, you can basically kill anybody you want on any mission without repercussion, as long as you complete the objective. Yet the harder the difficulty, the more restrictions you have on your character, the harder it is to get through the level because you can't do any non-essential kills. So here the gameplay suggests that the best players don't need to kill anybody in order to play the game. The game looks down upon murder by claiming that it's for amateurs. Non-violent prowess is actually an achievement in these thief games, an ideal skill to work toward. If you can make it through the level without having to resort to violence, the better you are as a player. Next, a character-based dilemma. Now, I'm going to talk about the Kane and Lynch games. Again, they're kind of indefensible as games, but they're very interesting narratives, even though they fall apart halfway through both of the games. I don't know how they keep falling apart, but hey, that's another issue entirely. Basically, every game in the universe nowadays has a male space marine with 5 o'clock shadow shooting aliens. And that's the whole story. But there's a few that don't do this. And Kane and Lynch is one of them. In the same way that TV shows like The Sopranos or Breaking Bad do, they have these anti-hero protagonists who are sort of in this gray void between good and bad. Kane, the main character, his whole plot in the game is to save his wife and daughter from these, again, that's a damsel in distress issue. That's a whole other issue entirely. Yeah, watch Feminist Frequency for that. That involves, it's a noble goal, but Kane does not care about who gets in his way. You basically kill the entirety of the LAPD in one mission because they're in your way. The means the means to his ends are very messed up, and the narrative causes the two leads to kill innocent people more often than not. Now, while they could have glossed this over, or even glorified it, the game frames these killings in a way that makes the player constantly aware of how messed up they are. Instead of celebrating the depravity, it influences you to think more deeply about these characters, about their personalities, about how they're doing these things. And it complicates the good-bad binary in the same way those two TV shows I mentioned before do. This whole anti-hero like fascination that's going on right now, given that we both sympathize and despise our protagonists, thus making the game way more interesting from a moral point of view. And that, lastly, morality is both gameplay and narrative influence. The first one, which I learned, I forget the name of the author of this book, but there's a game called The Ethics of Play, or The Ethics of Computer Games, and he comes to the same conclusions. The author of this book comes to the same conclusions as I do about Deus Ex, and that both the narrative and the gameplay make you really question your ethics. Deus Ex is a sci-fi conspiracy thriller. Literally every conspiracy is true in this game. There are aliens, there's the Illuminati, there's Majestic 12, there's body modifications. It's awesome. And let's see. But it contains a lot of allegiance switches and a lot of, these big organizations that have a stated agenda, but they have a secret agenda, and they have a secret agenda. And so you're not really sure who the enemies are, and you often have to infiltrate like bases and stuff, and in doing so you might have to kill somebody. But like these people who are guarding these bases and these facilities, they have dialogue and you can hear them, and they're just clearly just normal people who are either trying to make ends meet or who believe in the stated agenda of the facility. And it's very interesting from both gameplay and narrative. In that perspective, it's narrative influence. But also in the gameplay, it rewards a non-violent approach, and that the more loud and the more aggressive you are, the harder it is. Because let's say it's like robot sentries can start attacking you, and then security alarms will go off and all sorts of stuff. So it really rewards non-violence, and it makes you question whether or not the people that you can kill, whether you should, which is why I played the entire game with just tranquilizer darts. You can do it. It's possible. And then The Walking Dead, which is entirely based around morality, both the gameplay and the narrative. Let's see, you have all these options between either should I save this person or should I save the other person, and you can't save them both, or this person did something horrible, should we as a group kill them or just desert them, or there's somebody who needs water but then you also need water, so should you give them some of your water or should you keep it all for yourself? All that stuff like that. This sort of very cinematic, very morality-based gameplay is driven by difficult situations and pretty simple puzzles, but it does a good job of making the player feel very aware of the character's choices. And it actually even brings a community twist to it, in that at the end of each chapter, there's a list of each tough decision and comparisons to other players and what they've made. Whoop. Oh yeah, that was my last slide. Okay, so in conclusion, none of these games take their uses of violence lightly, even though they are extremely violent. But they all use their violence and their morality in interesting ways. There's always a weight to the violence, and there's always something that causes the player to think more about how it factors into the morality of the protagonists as well as your own as you're playing. The important part of each of these games is that they don't ignore morality. Whether it's encoded into the plot, gameplay, or both, it's still there and makes you think about why you're shooting a dude in the face. Thank you.
Actually, it would turn out that we apparently commandeered this room, and the people who did reserve it needed it in about 3 or 4 minutes. So we had a room reserved, but we had the lobby on the 4th floor reserved, but we're unable to set it up there. So we're going to be, for Brian's questions and then for Chris and Evan's presentations, we'll be doing them in the Kramer room on the 3rd floor, just past the info desk. So if everyone would be willing to move on upstairs, take some cookies